Welcome to the DeFi Standard. I'm Patty XRP, and with me, as always, is
Mickey B. Fresh.
nice. So we got an exciting release from the World Economic Forum. They released their DeFi Toolkit, and this is something that they send out to policymakers around the world so they can kind of reference it, understand what DeFi is, what kind of risks are associated with it, and then different ways to address how they're going to regulate this industry. And I'll just start off at the top here. So, their definition of DeFi is that it's a general term for an evolving trend. Broadly, it is a category of blockchain based decentralized applications, also known as dApps, for financial services. DeFi encompasses a variety of technologies, business models, and organizational structures, generally replacing traditional forms of intermediation. And then as we go down here, they have four distinguishing characteristics. So that's the financial services and products associated with it, trust minimized operation and settlement, non custodial design, and then programmable, open, and composable architecture. And they provided quite a few nice little flowcharts in this thing to give you a visual on how to do it. So we'll kind of have these up throughout this video and talk what's going on behind them. So this first figure, they have a DeFi classification flowchart, and it goes through those four categories that apply to DeFi services. And the first one, it's a question on, does it directly mediate the transfer of value? If the answer is yes, then you would keep going on along here. But in the case of no, it could be considered an auxiliary to DeFi services. So that could be like a price oracle. So something like Chainlink or the Flare Time series oracle. And it can also be non financial things like distributed cloud storage using a blockchain. And then moving along, does it settle on a public blockchain? If it does, you keep moving. And then if the assets cannot be unilaterally expropriated and moved by third parties, so that would be like somewhere where stuff can be moved around by third parties is going to be like an exchange or, some not decentralized entity. And then additionally, it asks, is there open source code and API? If all those are yes, then it's likely to be a DeFi service. So we can kind of see, if we take Flare Finance, for example, they directly mediate the transfer of value. It also settles on a public blockchain, which is the Flare network. Assets cannot be unilaterally expropriated or moved by third parties on Flare Finance. And then so it's non custodial. And additionally, it will have open source code before it launches when they release that, and an API. So that's kind of tying it back into the Flare networks and Flare Finance in that instance. But Mickey, yeah, what do you want to address with this one?
Yeah, this is a great simple breakdown of how to define what a DeFi service is. So those looking for like the building blocks of like what DeFi is, we're going to post this in the description below. So I think everyone should go through it themselves. I'm going to cover it here and Patty's going to go through it and I'll throw some commentary in. But this is like at the heart. So it does take a little, to level up our knowledge to be able to understand this because this is new to the whole world. So it's not something we're going to be able to grasp completely overnight. And, PDFs like this going out to regulators and governments and different financial institutions, I think are really good to get them understanding. So besides just us as retail investors understanding how to make yield, we see the whole world doing this. So I think that's even more reason why we need to level up our knowledge and just take this all in because every one of us are learning as every day goes by. And it's not something we just know and that's it. It's continuously evolving. And it's great to see the World Economic Forum put this out. So yeah, we can keep moving on, Patty.
Yeah, and I think this just kind of, it helps legitimize the space, similar
Mm-hmm.
to what was the toolkit they put out last year.
Oh,
Um,
the CBDC Toolkit
yeah.
for the Policymaker Toolkit for CBDCs came out last January 2020, and it named XRP in there. And as a asset to be used between, settling CBDCs between different nations and different fiat currencies. So this is a comparative, the same type of, paper, but just for DeFi. So this is at the level of that toolkit. So everyone should just understand that this is very high level World Economic Forum stuff. think Great Reset and all those type things.
Yeah, that's definitely where they're
And
coming
this chart
from.
I love.
Yeah, absolutely. I
That might be
think,
my
isn't it
favorite.
World Economic Forum's Davos? I think is that like
Yes.
meeting, where a lot of, people that you would consider maybe elites or just really big players around the world, whether it be financially or, in policy making,
Hmm.
that's where they kind of go and meet on a yearly
Yeah, it's like
basis.
in the,
So
yeah, I
take,
think it's in the mountain of Switzerland.
I
Yeah,
believe
they
so.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know if they did it this past year with the, with the bear flu and stuff. Um,
Yeah, I
but yeah,
do.
that's where it is.
Absolutely. And then moving on to this DeFi stack. So I really like this one a lot. It's color coded, shows you the value flow and everything. So on the bottom, we have layer one blockchains, which is the settlement layer. So that can be anything like the XRP ledger, Bitcoin's blockchain, Flare network, Ethereum. And then moving up, you're going to have the assets that are, being settled on top of the block or on the blockchains, and those can be algorithmic stable coins. They can be digital assets like Bitcoin, Ethereum, or NFTs. You could have an asset-backed stable coin. So that would be like the Ore stable coin that's coming from Trustline. That's going to be backed with like FXRP and Spark to start with. And then you also have fiat-backed stable coins. So that's something like USDC or Tether, where they keep either cash or highly liquid reserves in order to back that creation of value. And then additionally, you have like a gateway, and those are the wallets. So think about how maybe you've used MetaMask in the past to hook into a DApp protocol in order to access it. That would be like through wallets or with Bifrost coming out, accessing
Hmm.
different parts of the Flare network blockchain so you can utilize it more easily. Otherwise, we'd have to be in there like interacting with the smart contracts, and not not everybody can be a coder. It's
Dude,
not the easiest thing in the world.
this is actually an important layer, and I like how they separate it there, Patty, because everyone's asking about like, well, what a wallet is, and this is why these Web3 wallets are very different. You see how it's that orchestration layer in between there. That's the gateway to all these dApps. A Nano ledger, that's just a hard drive thing, is not a wallet that would fit in this category. It could work with MetaMask, but in and itself is not capable of doing what these Web3 wallets could do right here on this blue strip, right?
Yes. And
To connect to the dApps, I guess.
to add on to that, it's like, so, you have your Ledger Nano, that's considered a wallet. And, what's happening here is you may have XRP on it and it's living on this blockchain, the XRP ledger, and then the wallet allows you to access it. And then in Ledger Nano's case, it just holds that seed phrase offline via a hardware device. So that's kind of what's happening there. The assets aren't actually stored. It's just kind of a gateway, as they call it, to interact with the blockchain and utilize your funds. And then, kind of moving on here, we have the application layer. So that's like dApps, decentralized applications. So you could have a DEX like Uniswap. Trustline's going to be building out credit in the future. Finding a way to, you know, lend without having the need for collateral to be put up. Derivatives are something that's being continually worked on in the DeFi space, and then insurance, so like Nexus Mutual, and that allows a group of people to come together to basically provide some kind of insurance if there's like a DeFi hack or some error in the code or something like that. And then on top of this all, we have the aggregation layer, which is like a decentralized exchange aggregator or asset and yield management. So that could be like you're putting in predefined variables of like what you want to achieve with your portfolio. And then some protocol will interact with the DeFi ecosystems in order to like, get you to that point that you want to be. So, there's a lot of
Yeah,
layers to this, but
yeah, that aggregation layer is still just getting built out. So we
yeah.
haven't, that's why you might not have heard of some of the things there in that aggregation top. And I think we're going to see that built out because this is really just at the early stages right now. And that aggregation layer, there's not too much going on there yet because of scaling issues and some other things on Ethereum. I think we'll see more of that in the future as these centralized exchanges and institutions, hedge funds, custodians get involved. They'll take that role up as the aggregators, and then just give a front end service for the users.
Yep. And then finally, so the things they label as auxiliary on the side here would be like your oracles, like we were talking about earlier, pulling data, so indexing and querying off the blockchain, or these, decentralized applications. So you can display, okay, what is the yield, the APY, or, how much total value is locked in this protocol or like a liquidity pool. And then you also could have the need for storage, whether that's off chain or on chain. I know like some blockchains that are running into scaling issues, like, they'll kind of do some of this off chain. So this kind of gives you a really nice overview of the entire stack. There's a lot of pieces, and a lot of them are still being developed. Well, and then moving on to our final one, it has to do with DeFi governance approaches. So, a centralized governance is where developers directly control changes. So, you can just think of that like a centralized governance right now. So, Flare Network, they're controlling all the changes to the code of the Flare Network. So, like, technically, right now, the governance is centralized over the creation of the
Mm-hmm.
Flare Network, which I mean, I think most people agree with developers that they have the right to develop. The protocol in the ways that they see fit, that'll it'll do the best going forward. But over time, there's a process for that to change. And then when the Flare network launches, it's going to basically have decentralized governance from the beginning, as all the token holders will have a vote, and that's all the holders of Spark tokens. So for every Spark token you have, you'll have one governance vote attached with that. Additionally, you'll have the ability to find a proxy to vote for you, so you can delegate your governance vote to an individual and organization that you think will best align with your views on what should happen with these governance parameter changes or updates to the code.
Yeah, can I just jump in there? I want to say so. For example, Flare is going to be a DAO in the long term. That's how the governance set up to be is a DAO. It's going to be a decentralized, autonomous organization, and the governance will control everything. I think I would put, XRP Ledger kind of like in the middle. Where would you put that, Patty? It's not a DAO right now. That's probably partially decentralized governance,
Yeah,
right? Because it's the
votes instruct
federation.
multi-sig signers
Mm-hmm.
or have limited scope, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's put XRP Ledger there. Be honest, that's where it is. Flare's trying to be more of a DAO by fitting in a whole governance parameters where everybody who has a Spark token, you have the free right to vote just like everybody else who has a Spark token. So you're on even democratized, you know, playing field with everyone in the governance layer, where in XRP Ledger, you don't have that. You don't have a voting say in what goes on with the XRP Ledger. It's just designed differently. So I think just it's important to note going forward in governance. And XRP Ledger will have its side chains, which will be layer 2, and they'll have their own specific governance for that application. But that's a different design than what we're talking about here. And then the dApps, I think, on Flare or decentralized applications are going to be DAOs too. So we know Matthew Rosden, who's building the trust line and probity vault, like probity, that whole vault system is going to be a DAO. And we could see a day where these DAOs become actually incorporated corporations. And now that gets really fascinating when you have a regulated entity that's a DAO. So, where this space is going is pretty fascinating. But this is just the beginning of where we are with this.
Yes. And, one thing that I'm still kind of undecided on is, I can see use cases or, situations where having a partially decentralized
Mm-hmm.
governance may be better. Now, it's going to depend on who those stakeholders are that, ultimately get to vote and if they're altruistic or not, or, bad actors. So far on the XRP ledger, I think all the validators have, been rather good actors from what I can tell, and haven't done anything to like royally screw everybody as far as XRP Ledger goes. But there are some downsides to having completely decentralized governance, and the big one is voter turnout. So I remember when Kava was trying to upgrade their mainnet and add a bunch of like new features that people wanted. They were unable for multiple rounds to get enough turnout to actually get the governance vote to happen. And be confirmed. So that's one thing is, people just hold these assets and they don't pay attention to what's going on or aren't willing to at least delegate their vote to somebody that will, then the blockchains can be held back and not
Yes, good
advance in the
point.
proper timeline. So it's really important. Like I'll say, like especially for Flare in the early days, because we're gonna have to vote on the F asset system going live at a certain time point. Um, you're gonna want to either make sure that you're delegating to somebody so that they vote on your behalf, or you're doing the voting when the time comes, because the F asset system is like one of the major hanging points on the Flare network. And if we as a collective community can't get that to launch, it could not bode well. So we'll have to see on
Yes.
that.
And it just shows that things that can be decentralized and still have governance with them, like those two don't have to be separated from each other. It doesn't mean that, oh, it can't evolve because it's decentralized. You could have governance with decentralization, and that's exactly what Flare is building in.
And moving down to this next figure they have here, so they call it the DeFi service lifecycle. So this is often how DApp projects will start out centralized and then have a roadmap to decentralization. So, as we were speaking out earlier in the development stage, it's going to be more centralized because, putting a project like, all these different dApps together takes a lot of effort and communication, which communication is somewhat easier in a centralized environment at times. And then kind of as it starts moving forward, you'll have publication where they start introducing people to the dApp. And then moving on, you'll get to the deployment, so that's where the dApp is launching. And then you'll have the operation, so that's when it starts getting more fully decentralized, when they introduce like a DAO. So this is kind of the life cycle that they've set forth for how a lot of these dApps will come out. And I think it fits in with a lot of different things I've seen. Whether they're offering an IDO, so that's like an initial DAO offering, and that is kind of what the DFlare airdrop and snapshot is going to be with Flare Finance. So I just find this interesting that you can kind of, we've heard in the past like the SEC say, oh, something can start off centralized and become decentralized. This is kind of like the pathway that a lot of dApps are taking to get there. And then for the next part of this video, we're just going to recap the AMA that was hosted by Dogecoin Militia, where we got a chance to ask some questions of Hugo Philion, who's the CEO of Flare Limited and also one of the founders of the Flare Network. It's a very long AMA. I think we started getting into it about an hour 45 in. It's available on our channel for replay, and I'll throw a link to in this description. But Mickey, I'll let you kick off with takeaways from that.
Sure. So, yes, very interesting AMA, and it was very long, but we got some good questions in there at the end. And in the beginning, there were some good points that Hugo brought up, and especially about the recent funding round. I thought that was one of the biggest takeaways I got here. So, that was led by Kinetic Capital and Digital Currency Group, who is like the Goldman Sachs. He used the phrase the Goldman Sachs of crypto. And I thought that was like a really powerful thing, because I'm like, you know what? They are the Goldman Sachs of crypto. The Goldman Sachs right now in the traditional world has no impact on crypto. But you know what? Digital Currency Group has a major impact. They're part of Genesis Capital. They're a market maker. They're a trust fund. They're VC capital as well. And then they basically raised 11.3 million, but they turned away investors. They could have raised tens of millions of dollars, but they didn't need to. So a lot of those entities who funded Flare Limited are going to be stakeholders on the network. They're going to be agents. There'll be signal providers. There'll be validators. There'll be aggregators. There'll be CFI, where they'll be in the agent system, and Patty will go into that in a little while. And that was just a big takeaway, that they got all this institutional adoption, and it gives them more credibility to building this network. So it's not just us who get what they're building and be like, wow, this is really something. The institutional and VCs get it, where they had an over, I guess, what is it, subscription of that many VC investors, they have to turn them away. So I thought that was pretty powerful. And another takeaway that Hugo said was that Flare is a layer one network, and like the federated side chains that Ripple's doing with the XRP ledger are layer two. So they are different in that way. They are not the same thing. And I think that's very important takeaway. They're complementary to each other. It's not like, oh, we have federated sidechains. What's the point of needing Flare now? Absolutely not. Like, we gotta get rid of that FUD I saw going through the community yesterday. That is just nonsense. That's people that just don't look deeper into things and understand the Flare network is a decentralized layer one network. And now you have these different DApp ecosystems like Flare Finance and Probity that are built in Gala, that are built on top of it. But they use the underlying consensus and they settle right there on the public blockchains, where the federated sidechains do their thing off chain, off the main blockchain, and they could have their own consensus, they could have their own rules and their own, different setups, configurations for just those use cases, where the decentralized applications on Flare have to follow Flare's protocols that are built into the layer one. So I just thought that was an important difference how he described that. And he also said a big difference with Flare Network was Flare doesn't sacrifice the composability for scalability, like the way that some layer two Ethereum protocols do, where they sacrifice composability just to scale. And Flare doesn't do that. It's able to be very composable. Composable means that these applications could work with each other very easily. And we could see, for example, Flare Finance is building 6 different protocols together on one decentralized application, network. I mean, that's composability between all those 6 protocols. It's very composable, things building on Flare. So that gives it an advantage going forward, I think, in the future.
Nice. Yeah, those are excellent takeaways, Mickey. And for me, one of the things I really wanted to hear about was just, some extra points in Hugo's specific descriptions of how the F asset system works. So I'll start off with one of the things is the F asset system. When agents start to become under collateralized, they'll enter into like a collateral call. And if they don't, fulfill their collateralization ratio requirements, then the F asset system will take their Spark collateral and start buying at whatever F asset that they're defaulting on off the open market so that they can start closing out their position until they're back into the proper collateral ratio requirements. So to me, that makes it, highly unlikely for you to, suffer some default because an agent is not keeping up with their collateral correctly. So that's a huge thing for me. Additionally, Hugo did say that the Flare Limited team is going to be deploying their Spark in ways that make money for their business. And that will include them acting as a signal provider as well as being an agent in the F asset system. So I know one of the things me and Mickey were kind of, had been thinking about is how are they going to bootstrap the capital into the F asset system, the Spark for collateral. And I think that Flare Limited is uniquely positioned to do that, especially when the F asset minting goes live, around 6 to 8 weeks after launch, barring a governance vote. But at least we know that they have a large allocation of Spark as collateral, and it can be put there to be used to mint F assets from the get-go, so we can kind of start getting that flywheel spinning on the network. Additionally, the way he said it, it's going to be very difficult for individuals to be agents, which we kind of had speculated to this point. It seems like it's going to be CeFi providers, so maybe like somebody like Celsius or Nexo could do it, and also it's going to be possibly exchanges as well. And one of the things that we kind of thought was that we would be able to allocate our Spark to an agent to be used as collateral in the system. I'm thinking that may not be as great of an option as we originally were thinking to earn the underlying assets. The reason behind that is if we're having exchanges and CeFi providers and people like that, and they have to start managing, your assets for you, then it becomes custodial and they'll have to be money service providers. Additionally, I just don't, I can't imagine the yield's going to be as high for doing that. And if you go through an exchange, generally they'll just be like, hey, if you have this asset, stake it with us, stake in quotes, whatever that means for that specific token. and we'll just pay you a fixed fee or a fixed yield for the year, which that may be preferable to some people. But these agents or CeFi providers could essentially hook up with a signal provider and have some all-encompassing yield solution for layer one applications on the Flare network. So I think that's gonna change the strategy a little bit in how you use your Spark. Obviously, we're still going to be able to delegate our Spark detachable vote to the FTSO to earn yield, and then simultaneously use our Spark somewhere else. So maybe now you can look more to use your Spark in Flare Finance or in Trustline or some other DApp that comes out in the future. But those were the big takeaways around the F asset system for me. It was nice to talk to Hugo. It's kind of been a while since we've heard from him in the XRP community, so I enjoyed that thoroughly.
Yes, it was. It was really nice to talk to him. And one other thing I just want to throw in here as a takeaway was that Flare Limited is building the Flare network. They're the creators of it. It's not a product of theirs that they're marketing to us. It's a decentralized network for us to use and for us to govern and participate in. That's really important to understand here, that Flare Limited will have their own business model built on the Flare network. But the Flare network itself is a decentralized network, and it's for us to participate and participate in the governance and utilizing the network and building applications on it. It will have other stakeholders like signal providers and, like Patty said, agents and other entities, validators and state connector systems. But it's not a product marketed to us like the way Coinbase markets products. There will be those out there, but Flare Network itself is a decentralized blockchain. I think that's just very important to know. And the Flare team is the creators of it. And then once they launch it, it's like out there in the wild. You can't regulate the Flare Network, but you can some of the dApps. So I just think that's just important to note so everyone understands what Flare is. It's not a product being marketed to you. And they're not using you as a community. It's for your benefit. They're serving this basically to us with basically giving us the keys to the kingdom on a silver platter and saying, here's your Spark tokens, here's your governance vote, here's your value. Now go take it and build on it and create an ecosystem. And I think it's just fantastic the way they built it, not using value to secure the network. And I think long term, that's going to be really important as we go from proof of work flaws being depicted by the media and by the industry. They'll be then going over to proof of stake, because a lot of these proof of stake validators are going to have to be money service providers, because they're going to be holding actual value and they're distributing yields to people. That's going to make them money service providers. I think they're going to come under regulatory compliance with that at some point, no matter what. But with Flare, you could delegate your detachable vote to earn yield to a signal provider, and the protocol FTSO pays you directly. So those signal providers don't have to be money service providers. And I think that's really important because it allows for more innovative companies to develop. They don't have to be just centralized big institutions or exchanges. And I think that's just powerful moving forward, because you get a really diverse ecosystem of market participants and stakeholders. And I think that's healthy going forward for the Flare network. And I think it will separate it from other networks. Patty and I are going to make a little chart on how Spark is different and how Flare is different from Ethereum 1.0 and 2.0. So look for that coming out in the future.
Nice. Yeah. And I mean, really, we are the drivers behind this network, as well as anybody else that, becomes a stakeholder and starts to build on it. So we're all going to have to work together. And, when we're differing on, different directions for the ecosystem to go, we're going to have compromise to keep it moving forward. So, it's going to be a very interesting, especially, first 6 months once Flare gets launched.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think this is a good
The
note to. Oh
foundation,
yeah,
I guess that's the last thing I guess we got to throw in there is that
yeah,
he did say the foundation will be announcing itself and they will help put out papers to get the governance kickstarted and all that. So expect that coming in the very near future, because that was a big part of the white paper and we just haven't heard anything yet on that. So that should be coming out soon and we'll cover that as well. And I think that will help the community get going as this thing launches. They didn't give a launch date, so they don't want to put pressure on their engineers for a specific date, but it looks like we're looking at sometime mid-late July. Just rough estimate. Patty and I were thinking. They didn't say that. They said plus or minus 2 to 4 weeks from June. So that would put it somewhere probably in July. But that's why you don't have a specific date. This is launching a new network. They're not going to risk the security just to get it out a week earlier or two. That's very important. So don't rush them with that. And I think that's about it, Patty. Anything else?
I don't have anything else, so we can
That was
wrap it
great.
up. This is the DeFi Standard. I'm Patty XRP,
And I'm Mickey B. Fresh.
and
And
we're
we're out.
out. See y'all.